Daniel Hayes wiped down the counter for the third time that hour. The rag in his hand had lost its color long ago, but he kept using it anyway. Habit. Distraction. Anything to keep from looking at the unopened bills stacked inside the office drawer. The diner was quiet. Too quiet. The neon sign outside buzzed weakly, the letters flickering against the drizzle that had been falling all afternoon. A few booths were empty except for crumbs and coffee stains. The hum of the old refrigerator in the back was the only steady sound. Daniel glanced toward the door as if a customer might walk in. None did. The truth was simple. He was out of time. Rent overdue. Suppliers pulling out. Power company threatening to cut him off. Everyone in the neighborhood said the same thing, that he had no one to blame but himself. Too soft. He overheard one regular mutter weeks ago. Guy keeps feeding every stray that comes in. No wonder he's broke. Maybe they were right. But Daniel couldn't turn people away. Every night someone came in, a tired mother, a kid with hollow eyes, an old man who hadn't had a hot meal in days. He never asked questions. He just cooked. That was who he was. If I can make it, they can eat. He'd tell himself under his breath. That night, the bell above the door jingled. Daniel looked up. A man stepped inside, thin, soaked through, his coat clinging to him like a second skin. His beard was patchy. His eyes were sunken, his hands trembling. He looked like he hadn't had a warm bed in weeks. Daniel didn't hesitate. He gestured to a booth. Sit down, buddy. You're freezing. The man didn't answer. He shuffled forward and slid into the booth. His smell carried rainwater and exhaustion, the kind that clung after too many nights sleeping on sidewalks. Daniel poured a steaming mug of coffee, set a bowl of chicken soup in front of him, and even slid over 2 painkillers from a jar near the register. From the corner booth, 2 locals whispered just loud enough for Daniel to hear. See? That's why he's broke, one muttered. Guy's feeding strays while the bank's about to eat him alive. Daniel's jaw tightened. He caught their reflection in the chrome of the coffee machine but didn't turn around. No point defending himself. Let them talk. The stranger lifted the spoon with shaking hands and ate slowly. His eyes never left Daniel. He watched every move, the way Daniel tucked the rag into his apron, the way he leaned forward with concern, the way he carried himself like the weight of the world was pressing down on his shoulders. It was unsettling. Daniel rubbed his tired eyes and kept moving, unaware that this night wasn't just another night. It was the start of something that would change everything. Morning came too quickly. Pale light spilled through the fogged windows, highlighting dust Daniel hadn't had time to wipe. The diner had only 2 customers, old men who sat in silence until one leaned over his coffee. "Per fool's too soft," he said. "Soft?" the other scoffed. "It's stupidity. Can't pay rent but hands out food like it grows on trees." Both chuckled. Daniel refilled salt shakers, his face expressionless. Inside, the words cut deeper than he let on. He had learned to move with deliberate calm, to keep his hands busy so his mind wouldn't collapse under the weight of unpaid invoices. By mid-afternoon, the stranger returned. Same ragged coat, same quiet steps. Daniel looked up from the grill and nodded toward a booth. "You again," Daniel said softly, setting a plate of eggs and toast in front of him. "Eat. No arguments." The man's hands shook as he picked up the fork. He barely spoke, but his eyes stayed fixed on Daniel. Watching. Always watching. Words spread fast around the neighborhood. Daniel wasn't noble, he was foolish. Suppliers stopped answering his calls. One delivery truck never showed, and when Daniel finally reached the driver, the answer was curt. "Pay your balance first. Then we'll talk." That night, Daniel stepped outside to toss the trash. 2 men leaned against a lamppost, voices low but sharp enough to cut through the drizzle. "Man's drowning himself," one said. "Don't waste your pity. He chose this life. You can't feed everyone." Daniel froze, trash bag in hand. For a flicker of a moment, he wondered if they were right. Maybe this was all his fault. But then he remembered the faces, the hungry kids, the tired mothers, the silent man inside eating like it was the first real meal in days. That doubt passed like a shadow. Back inside, the diner lights buzzed faintly. Daniel leaned against the counter, exhaustion clear in the lines of his face. He didn't notice the stranger watching him from the booth, eyes softer now, almost interested. The whispers outside kept growing louder. But Daniel kept opening his doors each morning. And the man kept coming back. Silent. Observing. The week stretched on, each day tighter than the last. By Tuesday, Daniel was cooking from scraps. Half a bag of rice. A few bruised tomatoes he'd bought cheap from a vendor who felt sorry for him. The meals weren't much, but they were warm, and that was enough for the people who walked in. By Thursday, the letter came. Thick envelope. Bold red letters on the front. Daniel sat at the counter, thumb running along the edge of the seal, his stomach sinking. He didn't even need to open it. He already knew. When he tore it open, the words confirmed his fear: foreclosure. Unless the debt was paid in full, the diner would be seized in just a few days. That night, the diner was nearly empty. Just the hum of the fridge and the clink of the stranger's spoon against the chipped bowl. Daniel sat across from him this time, too drained to stand. For a moment, he thought the man might finally speak. His lips parted slightly, but no words came. Only that same steady stare, unreadable. Daniel leaned back, the envelope still burning in his pocket. He didn't know it yet, but tomorrow morning, everything would change. Friday morning arrived with the sound of heavy rain slapping against the fogged-up windows. Daniel Hayes unlocked the diner door, flicked the neon sign on, and stood in silence for a moment. The buzz of electricity fought against the storm outside, but inside, the silence was heavier than ever. He brewed a fresh pot of coffee even though he knew most of it would go untouched. The few regulars who still came around weren't here for coffee, they were here to watch him fail. Every time someone stirred sugar into a cup or folded a newspaper at the counter, Daniel could feel their eyes. The judgment wasn't subtle anymore. "Guy's on his last leg," one whispered. "Won't last a week." Daniel kept his back to them. He poured himself coffee, black, no sugar. His hands shook slightly as he brought the cup to his lips. The bell over the door rang. Daniel looked up. The same man. The ragged coat dripping rainwater onto the floor. The same hollow eyes. The same silence. He walked slowly, like every step carried weight. He slid into his usual booth without a word. Daniel set a plate of pancakes in front of him this time. "Eat. Don't worry about it." The man nodded faintly but said nothing. His fork scraped against the plate, his eyes locked on Daniel's every move. Daniel turned away, uncomfortable under the stare. Something about the man was off. He wasn't just hungry. He was studying him, almost testing him. By noon, the diner was empty again. The rain hadn't let up. Daniel leaned against the counter, flipping through the envelope that had arrived yesterday. Foreclosure notice. His throat tightened every time his eyes hit the deadline. Just 3 days left. When he looked up, the stranger was still there. The plate was empty. The coffee mug drained. But he hadn't moved. Daniel frowned. "You need something else?" For a moment, the man seemed to consider answering. His lips parted, then closed again. He shook his head and slid out of the booth. His movements were stiff, deliberate. Without a word, he left the diner. The bell jingled. The door closed. Daniel exhaled slowly. Relief mixed with unease. Whoever that man was, he wasn't just another drifter. That evening, Daniel stayed late. He scrubbed the counters, restocked the napkin holders, wiped the same glass 3 times just to keep busy. The rain had stopped, but the silence felt worse than before. As he tossed the trash out back, 2 voices carried from the alley. "Neighbors again. Place is done," one said. "Shame, but he brought it on himself. Can't run a business feeding people for free. Bet the bank's already got a buyer lined up." Daniel froze in the shadows, trash bag in hand. Their words hit harder than he wanted to admit. Maybe they were right. Maybe this was his fault. But when he walked back inside, the smell of coffee and fried onions still clung to the air, and he thought of all the faces that had come through his door. The ones who couldn't pay but left with something warm in their stomachs. That memory was enough to keep him moving. Saturday morning, Daniel arrived to find an envelope taped to the door. He tore it off quickly, half expecting another warning. Instead, it was blank. No return address. Inside was a single folded note. Keep the doors open. Don't stop. That was all it said. Daniel looked up and down the street. Empty sidewalks. No sign of who left it. He shoved the note into his pocket and stepped inside. Something in his chest tightened. Whoever had left that message knew what was happening. And they wanted him to keep going. But why? By noon, the stranger was back again. Same booth. Same silence. Daniel placed a plate in front of him, forcing a smile. You've been here a lot this week. You from around here? The man didn't answer. He just ate. Slow. Methodical. Watching. Daniel leaned against the counter, staring back this time. He was done pretending the man wasn't creeping him out. Finally, the man spoke. His voice was low, raspy, but steady. You don't turn anyone away. Daniel froze. It was the first thing he'd ever said. That's right, Daniel said carefully. If someone's hungry, I feed them. The man nodded once, then went back to eating. Daniel waited for more, but nothing came. Just silence. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. He sat at the counter long after closing, the foreclosure letter spread out in front of him, the mysterious note beside it. His thoughts circled endlessly. The man wasn't random. He was here for a reason. But what reason? And why now, when everything was falling apart? Sunday morning? The storm had passed, but Daniel felt no lighter. The diner was nearly empty. A couple of locals sipped coffee, whispering as always. By mid-morning, 2 uniformed officers stepped through the door. Daniel's chest tightened instantly. He knew why they were here. Mr. Hayes? One of them asked. Daniel nodded. We're here on behalf of the bank. You've been served notice. Unless debts are cleared immediately, this property will be repossessed tomorrow. The diner went silent. Customers turned to watch. The whispers began immediately. Told you. He's finished. Daniel's throat felt dry. He nodded once. Understood. The officers left. The silence they left behind felt heavier than the storm. Daniel stood still, gripping the counter so hard his knuckles went white. He didn't argue. What was the point? The end was coming. Then, outside, the sound of tires screeching against the curb. Daniel's head snapped up. A line of black SUVs rolled up in front of the diner. Engines idled. Doors opened. The same stranger stepped out. Only he wasn't the same anymore. The ragged coat was gone. In its place was a tailored suit, pressed sharp, gleaming in the morning sun. His beard was neatly trimmed, his posture straight, his presence commanding. Behind him, men in suits carried thick folders and briefcases. The diner froze. Forks stopped midair. Conversations died. Even the officers at the door stiffened. The man walked forward, each step deliberate, his gaze locked on Daniel. And for the first time, Daniel realized. This man wasn't who he thought he was. And whatever was about to happen would change everything. The room was frozen. Not a single voice dared to break the silence as the suited stranger crossed the diner floor. His shoes clicked against the old boards, echoing too loudly in the cramped space. Every eye followed him. Daniel Hayes stayed behind the counter, his breath shallow. The rag he always carried slipped from his hand onto the floor. His chest tightened with every step the stranger took. The man stopped a foot away, stared directly at him, and set a heavy folder on the counter. Mr. Hayes, he said, his voice steady and clear. This is for you. Daniel blinked. He didn't reach for it. The folder looked official, Too official, thick with papers sealed with tabs. The man's gaze didn't waver. Everything you owe. Every debt. Paid in full. Gasps rippled through the diner. Someone's fork clattered against a plate. A murmur swept through the booths. Daniel shook his head slightly, as if refusing to believe. What are you talking about? The man gestured at the folder. Take a look. Hands trembling, Daniel opened it. His eyes darted across the first page, then the second. Property deeds. Bank receipts. All stamped, all cleared. His throat closed as he flipped another page. Every bill. Every overdue invoice. Marked paid. It made no sense. This has to be a mistake, Daniel muttered, slamming the folder shut. I didn't how? It's no mistake, the man interrupted. His voice carried enough authority to silence the whispers in the room. You gave me food when I had nothing. More than once. No questions asked? No judgment. Just kindness. Daniel froze. His eyes flicked to the man's face. Beneath the perfect grooming, beneath the confidence, he could still see the shadow of the hungry stranger who'd sat in his booth. You? Daniel asked quietly. The man nodded once. Yes. I wanted to know if you were real. If generosity still existed without an angle. So I tested you. And you passed. The locals who had mocked him 2 days ago now sat stiff in their seats, shame creeping across their faces. Daniel's hands shook. I don't even know your name. The man extended his hand. Nathan Cole. Daniel didn't take it at first. The name felt familiar. Too familiar. And then it clicked. He'd seen it before. On the cover of a business magazine. On billboards for real estate developments across the state. Nathan Cole wasn't just anyone. He was a billionaire. The diner erupted into hushed chaos. People whispered, stared, some pulled out their phones to record. Nathan didn't flinch. He leaned closer. You kept feeding people when you couldn't afford it. You ignored the voices telling you it was weakness. That's why I'm here. This place? It's yours now. Free and clear. Daniel's chest tightened. His heart pounded. He wanted to believe it, but it was too much. Too sudden. Why me? He asked, his voice almost breaking. Nathan studied him for a long moment. Because men like you don't come around often. And when they do, they're worth protecting. The officers shifted uncomfortably at the door. One finally cleared his throat. Sir, if this is true, then legally. Nathan turned his gaze on them. Cold. Sharp. It's true. Check the documents yourselves if you need proof. They exchanged a glance. Neither moved forward. Not against Nathan Cole. Daniel looked around the diner. The same customers who had called him a fool now stared at him in silence. Some with awe. Others with guilt. His palms pressed flat against the folder, grounding himself. You really did this? Nathan's expression softened. Yes. And I'm not done. This diner has potential. More than potential, it has heart. I want to invest. Expand. Put your name on more doors. Spread this vision. Daniel shook his head slowly. No. That's too much. It's not too much. It's the right amount, Nathan said firmly. This neighborhood needs someone like you. Not another soulless chain. You've proven what you stand for. Let me help you scale it. Daniel exhaled shakily, still unable to process. Then, a voice from the booth near the window cut through the silence. Why would anyone believe this? He's playing you. All heads turned. It was one of the regulars, a man who had mocked Daniel for weeks. His arms were crossed, his glare fixed on Nathan. Billionaires don't just walk into diners and hand out money, the man sneered. This is some kind of stunt. A heavy silence followed. The tension returned, sharp as glass. Nathan's jaw tightened. His eyes locked onto the heckler. You think this is a stunt? His voice was calm, but dangerous. The man hesitated. Sweat formed at his temple. I think it's too convenient. Nathan reached into his suit pocket and pulled out a sleek black phone. He tapped the screen, then placed it face up on the counter. A wire transfer screen glowed brightly. Multiple zeros filled the space where an amount had been entered. In 5 seconds I can prove I'm not here for show, Nathan said. His finger hovered over the screen. Should I? The diner was silent. The regular sank back into his seat, his face pale. Nathan's finger stayed in place. He turned back to Daniel. You don't need more proof. You just need to decide whether you'll accept what's already been given. Daniel stared at him. His world was spinning. His life had been collapsing for weeks, and now, this? It felt impossible. Unreal. But the weight of the folder in his hands said otherwise. Nathan leaned closer, lowering his voice so only Daniel could hear. This isn't charity. It's an opportunity. Don't waste it. And then he straightened, signaling to the men behind him. One step forward, placing another folder on the counter. This, Nathan said, is a proposal. Expansion plans. Contracts. All drafted. All waiting for your decision. The entire diner watched. Daniel's heart pounded in his chest. He hadn't even fully processed saving his diner. Now they were asking him to multiply it. He swallowed hard. I need time. Nathan gave a slow nod. You'll have it. But not much. And with that, he turned toward the door, his men following. The bell jingled as the door closed behind them. The black SUVs pulled away, engines growling low. The diner was left in stunned silence. Daniel stared down at the 2 folders in front of him. One marked the end of his nightmare. The other could change everything. But not necessarily for the better. The diner stayed quiet long after the black SUVs vanished. No one moved. No one spoke. Even the 2 officers lingered awkwardly, their eviction orders useless now, the weight of their authority stripped away in seconds. Daniel Hayes leaned against the counter, his hands still pressed flat against the folders. He couldn't bring himself to open the second one. Not yet. The regulars whispered, some pretending to sip coffee they'd long finished. Others watched Daniel openly, waiting for him to react. The man who challenged Nathan sat stiffly in the corner, eyes down, humiliated but still fuming. Daniel finally drew in a breath. Everyone out. Head snapped toward him. You heard me, he said louder. We're closed. A shuffle of chairs, a scrape of shoes. No arguments, no protests. One by one, they filed out into the street, leaving the diner empty except for Daniel, the folders, and the faint hum of the refrigerator in the back. He sat down in a booth and pulled the second folder closer. His fingers hesitated on the clasp. Then he opened it. Inside was a neat stack of documents, all printed on thick, expensive paper. At the top, bold letters, Expansion Agreement. Daniel's eyes darted across the pages. Clauses. Timelines. Commitments. Every word screamed business. The proposal was detailed. Too detailed. Site plans for 3 new locations. Branding guidelines. Employee structure. Even projected revenue figures. Daniel's throat tightened. This wasn't a suggestion. It was a roadmap. And it had been prepared long before Nathan ever stepped foot into his diner. That meant only one thing. He had been watched. The next morning, Daniel didn't sleep. He sat in the same booth all night, staring at the documents, flipping pages, his coffee cold and untouched. By dawn, his eyes burned. He finally shoved the folder shut, but the words kept echoing in his head. When the door jingled at opening time, Daniel looked up. Nathan Cole stood there again. No entourage this time. Just him. Daniel's jaw tightened. You didn't waste time. Nathan smiled faintly, sliding into the booth across from him. Time is a luxury I don't afford. Neither should you. Daniel shoved the folder across the table. This was ready before you ever came in here. Why? Nathan didn't flinch. Because I don't gamble. I calculate. I knew what you'd do before you knew it yourself. Daniel's stomach turned. You were watching me. Nathan leaned back. I was observing. There's a difference. And what I saw confirmed everything I hoped for. Daniel's hands curled into fists. You don't know me. I know enough. Nathan said calmly. You're drowning. But you still feed people who can't pay. You sacrifice profit for integrity. You have what money can't buy. Daniel shook his head. You make it sound like that's a flaw. It's not a flaw. Nathan replied smoothly. It's the reason I'm here. For a long moment either spoke. Then Nathan leaned forward. I'll be clear. I didn't save your diner for charity. I did it because I need someone like you. Someone the public trusts. Someone who looks real. Authentic. And that's what you are. Daniel's chest tightened. So that's it. You want me as your puppet. Nathan's eyes flashed, but his voice stayed calm. No. I want you as my partner. There's a difference. Daniel let out a bitter laugh. Partner? That's what you call this. You drop money on my table and expect me to fall in line? Nathan didn't answer. He just slid a card across the table. Black, embossed with silver letters. An address. A time. Come tonight, Nathan said. One meeting. Hear me out before you decide. After that, walk away if you want. Daniel eyed the card but didn't touch it. Nathan stood, buttoning his jacket. But if you do walk away, remember this, you'll still owe me. I cleared your debts. That doesn't just vanish. He left without another word. The bell jingled as the door closed behind him. Daniel sat frozen, staring at the black card. His chest was heavy. He didn't like being cornered. And that's exactly what this was. By evening, the diner was empty again. The card still sat on the counter, the bold silver letters catching the light. Daniel picked it up. Read the address. A downtown high-rise he'd only ever seen from the outside. He should stay home. Ignore it. Cut ties. But he couldn't. By 8 p.m., he was there. The building was glass and steel, towering over the city. Valets parked luxury cars in a steady stream. Men in tailored suits and women in gowns flowed through the doors, laughing as if they owned the night. Daniel felt out of place the moment he stepped inside. His jacket was worn, his shoes scuffed. He stuck out like a sore thumb. But the receptionist didn't blink. Top floor, Mr. Hayes. They're expecting you. Expecting him. The elevator ride felt endless. His stomach knotted tighter with each floor. When the doors finally opened, the scene before him stole his breath. A private event. Crystal chandeliers. Walls of glass revealing the entire city skyline. Dozens of people mingling, glasses of champagne in hand. And at the center, Nathan Cole. He spotted Daniel instantly, and gestured him over. Glad you came, Nathan said, his voice carrying authority even over the chatter. Daniel glanced around. What is this? Nathan smiled faintly. Investors. Partners. People who matter. And soon they'll see you as one of them. Daniel's skin prickled. He didn't like the sound of that. Nathan clapped him on the shoulder. Walk with me. They moved through the crowd, past servers carrying silver trays, past conversations that hushed when Daniel walked by. He felt the stares. The sizing up. Nathan led him to a private room at the back. The noise of the party faded as the door shut. Inside, it was just the two of them. A table. 2 glasses of whiskey waiting. Nathan gestured for him to sit. Now we talk business. Daniel stayed standing. I didn't come here to sell myself. Nathan's expression hardened. Then you misunderstand. You're already in this. The only question is how deep you're willing to go. Daniel's pulse spiked. And if I say no? Nathan leaned forward, voice low. Then you'll find out what happens to people who waste opportunities I've given them. The tension in the room was suffocating. Daniel realized something then. Saving the diner hadn't been a gift. It was a hook. And now he was caught. Daniel stood stiffly in the private room, his fists tight at his sides. The whiskey on the table went untouched. He didn't trust anything in this place, not even the drink. Nathan sat back casually, swirling his own glass. His calmness only made Daniel more uneasy. "You look tense," Nathan said. "You shouldn't. You've already won. Your diner is saved. People in this city will see you as a symbol of community, resilience, generosity. But symbols need backing. They need structure. That's what I'm offering you." Daniel shook his head. "No. What you're offering is control. You saved me just to own me." Nathan's smile flickered then hardened. "Daniel, let me be very clear. You had nothing. You were days away from being shut down. Without me, you wouldn't have a diner to argue about. You'd have an empty building and another failure on your record. Now you have a chance to matter. A chance to lead. To expand. I never asked for expansion. You didn't have to," Nathan said flatly. "This is bigger than you." The silence stretched. Daniel's pulse hammered in his neck. He wanted to walk out, slam the door, and never see Nathan again. But the folder back at the diner haunted him. Those debts were gone. The foreclosure notice was erased. And Nathan had made it clear that debt was now replaced by something else. Something unspoken, but heavier. Daniel finally asked, "What exactly do you want from me?" Nathan leaned forward, voice sharp. "Obedience. Loyalty. And results." Daniel's chest tightened. "And if I don't give you that?" Nathan's smile returned, but colder this time. "Then the diner becomes a memory. And so do you." The next day, Daniel tried to shake it off. He reopened the diner, cooked breakfast for the handful of regulars who still showed up, and forced himself to act normal. But nothing felt normal. Every time the door jingled, he half expected men in suits to walk in. Every time a car slowed near the curb, his stomach twisted. The whispers hadn't stopped either. People were already talking about the black SUVs, about the stranger in the suit, about Daniel's sudden good fortune. Some said he'd sold the diner. Others claimed he'd taken dirty money. Daniel ignored them, but the rumors spread faster than he could work. By afternoon, a delivery truck arrived. For a moment, Daniel felt relief. Maybe things were turning. But when the driver stepped inside, he handed Daniel a clipboard with a smirk. "Guess you're important now," the driver said. "New supplier. Orders prepaid. Courtesy of your friend." Daniel froze. "What do you mean prepaid?" "Everything's covered," the driver said. "Your guy wants you stocked. Says you'll need it when the second location opens." Daniel's throat went dry. Second location? He hadn't signed a single thing. But Nathan was already moving pieces around him like he was just another pawn. That evening, Daniel closed early. He sat alone in the diner, lights dimmed, staring at the stack of invoices marked paid. It should have felt like relief. Instead, it felt like chains tightening. He picked up the phone and dialed Nathan's number from the black card. The line clicked almost immediately. "Hayes," Nathan's voice said smoothly. "I was expecting your call." Daniel gritted his teeth. "Stop sending me things I didn't agree to. I don't want your deliveries. I don't want your second location. I don't want any of this." Nathan chuckled softly. "That's where you're wrong. You need this. And whether you admit it or not, you've already accepted it. The moment you let me clear your debts, the game changed. I didn't agree to be part of your empire. Empires don't ask for permission," Nathan said coldly. "They expand. With or without consent. You can fight it, Hayes, but that just makes you look ungrateful. And ungrateful men don't last long." The line went dead. For the next week, the pressure mounted. New faces started showing up at the diner. Men in suits who didn't eat, just sat in booths, watching. They never spoke much. Never smiled. Just observed. Customers noticed. Some stopped coming altogether. One night, Daniel locked up late and found an envelope tucked under the diner door. Inside, a thick stack of cash. No note. No explanation. He threw it into the office drawer and slammed it shut. But the next morning, another envelope appeared. Bigger. By Friday there were 3. Nathan wasn't giving him a choice. He was burying him under obligations, under silent agreements Daniel hadn't made but couldn't undo. That weekend, Daniel tried to escape it. He drove out of town, hours away, just to breathe. But when he pulled into a gas station, a black SUV rolled up beside him. The driver leaned out the window. Sunglasses, sharp suit, expression unreadable. "Mr. Hayes?" the man said calmly. "Mr. Cole asked me to remind you, there's a meeting Monday. Don't be late." Daniel's stomach dropped. "How did you even find me out here?" The man didn't answer. Just tipped his head and drove off. Daniel stood frozen at the pump, the nozzle still in his hand, his mind racing. No matter where he went, they could find him. Monday came too fast. The meeting was held in a downtown office tower, 20 floors up. Daniel was escorted by 2 men in suits into a sleek boardroom filled with strangers. Nathan sat at the head of the table. He looked relaxed, in control, as if every person in the room existed solely to carry out his plan. "Gentlemen," Nathan began, "meet Daniel Hayes, the face of our new expansion." Applause followed. Not the warm kind. The sharp, polite kind that felt rehearsed. Daniel's stomach twisted. Nathan turned to him. "Tell them, Daniel. Tell them why your diner survived when others failed." Daniel hesitated, then muttered, "Because I didn't turn people away." "Exactly," Nathan said, smiling at the room. "Compassion. Integrity. That's what makes him perfect. That's what sells." The word sells burned in Daniel's chest. He wasn't a man anymore. He was a product. The meeting dragged on, full of talk about profits, projections, marketing strategies. Daniel barely spoke. He just listened, trapped in a world he didn't understand, watching as decisions about his life were made without him. When it finally ended, Nathan pulled him aside. "You see how they look at you," Nathan said. "Like you're already one of them. You've stepped into a bigger world, Hayes. And trust me, there's no stepping back." Daniel stared at him, jaw tight. "What if I don't want this world?" Nathan's smile didn't fade. "Then you'll lose more than a diner." For the first time, Daniel felt real fear crawl under his skin. He wasn't being offered a choice. He was being owned. The next morning, Daniel barely slept. His eyes burned as he brewed coffee in the empty diner, the quiet hum of the refrigerator sounding louder than usual. Everywhere he turned, he saw traces of Nathan's reach. The paid invoices stacked in the office drawer. The boxes of supplies arriving without order. The men in suits who sometimes lingered outside, watching from across the street. It wasn't his diner anymore. It was theirs. By noon, a young couple came in with their daughter. Daniel forced a smile, served them pancakes, tried to act like nothing had changed. But when he returned to clear their plates, the father leaned in slightly. "Word is you've got new partners," he said casually. Daniel froze. "What makes you say that?" The man shrugged. "People talk. They say you're backed by some big shot now. That this place isn't really yours anymore." Daniel's throat tightened. "It's still mine," he muttered. But even as he said it, he didn't believe it. Later that day, another envelope appeared under the door. Daniel didn't open it. He tossed it straight into the trash, refusing to even look at the money inside. An hour later, a black SUV idled at the curb. 2 men stepped out, walked in without ordering, and sat in a booth. They didn't eat. Didn't drink. Just sat. Watching. Daniel's hands shook as he wiped down the counter. Every movement felt observed, judged, recorded. Finally, one of the men stood and walked up to him. He placed the unopened envelope back on the counter. "You dropped something," the man said. His tone was calm, but the weight in his voice left no room for argument. Daniel said nothing. He just stared at the envelope until the men left. That night, Daniel drove to his sister's house on the edge of the city. He hadn't seen her in months, but he needed someone to talk to. Someone outside of Nathan's world. She opened the door, surprised. "Danny? You look like hell." He forced a weak smile. "Can we talk?" They sat in her kitchen while her kids slept upstairs. Daniel told her everything, about the diner, the debts, Nathan, the SUVs, the envelopes. When he finished, his sister's face was pale. "Danny, this sounds dangerous." "I know. You need to walk away." "I can't. He paid off everything. He owns me." His sister leaned forward. "Then you go to the cops. Tell them what's happening." Daniel shook his head. "And say what? That a man gave me money and saved my business? They'll laugh me out of the station. And if Nathan finds out I tried." He trailed off, his hands gripping the edge of the table. His sister didn't argue. She just reached over and squeezed his hand. The following day, Daniel tried to keep his head down. He served breakfast, refilled coffee, pretended like nothing was wrong. But when he stepped into the office around noon, the air froze in his lungs. Nathan was sitting in his chair. Calm. Composed. Waiting. Daniel's heart kicked hard against his ribs. "How the hell did you get in here?" Nathan smirked. "Locks don't keep me out, Hayes. You should know that by now." Daniel's jaw clenched. "What do you want?" "To remind you who you belong to," Nathan said, standing slowly. "I hear you've been talking. Confiding in people. That's a mistake." Daniel's blood ran cold. His sister. Somehow Nathan knew. "I didn't." "Don't lie to me," Nathan snapped, his calm mask cracking for the first time. His voice was sharp, like steel. "You think you can slip out? You can't. You're mine now. Everything you do, every word you speak, I'll know." He stepped closer, his eyes locked on Daniel's. "You asked me once what would happen if you didn't give me loyalty. Do you really want to find out?" Daniel's chest tightened. He shook his head. "Good," Nathan said, smoothing his jacket. His calm returned as quickly as it had vanished. "Then you'll show up tomorrow night. There's an event. Important people will be there. You'll smile, you'll shake hands, and you'll play your part. Do that, and everything stays comfortable. And if I don't?" Daniel forced himself to ask. Nathan's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Then your sister will learn what real debt feels like." When Nathan left, Daniel collapsed into the chair, shaking. He buried his face in his hands, struggling to breathe. He'd known he was trapped. But now the trap had teeth. That night he barely slept. Every creak in the hallway, every car outside made him flinch. He kept picturing his sister's face, his niece and nephew asleep upstairs. Nathan hadn't just taken his diner. He'd taken his life. The next evening, Daniel found himself standing outside a luxury hotel downtown. Valets rushed to open doors, lights glittered above the entrance, and a red carpet led into a ballroom already buzzing with expensive laughter. Daniel adjusted the tie Nathan's men had forced into his hands earlier that day. He hated the feel of it. It wasn't him. But he walked in anyway. Inside, chandeliers sparkled overhead. Waiters carried trays of champagne. Politicians, bankers, and executives mingled in clusters. And at the center of it all stood Nathan Cole. Perfect suit. Calm smile. Untouchable. When he spotted Daniel, his smile widened. He gestured him forward like he was presenting his newest prize. "Ladies and gentlemen," Nathan announced, his voice carrying across the room. "Meet Daniel Hayes, the man who built a diner out of nothing, who feeds the hungry when others turn them away. A man of the people." Polite applause followed. Cameras flashed. Daniel stood stiff, his throat tight. Nathan leaned close, whispering in his ear. "Smile, Hayes. Everyone's watching." Daniel forced a smile. But inside, his blood boiled. He realized something then: Nathan wasn't just using him. He was building a myth around him. A story he could sell. And Daniel was the puppet. By the end of the night, Daniel's head was pounding. The champagne, the fake conversations, the stares, it was suffocating. As he slipped toward the exit, Nathan intercepted him. "You did well," Nathan said smoothly. "See? You belong in this world." Daniel glared at him. "I don't belong to you." Nathan's smile thinned. "Keep telling yourself that. But remember, I don't lose what's mine." He leaned in close, his voice barely a whisper. "And neither does your sister." Daniel froze, his breath caught. Nathan straightened, his smile returning as if nothing had been said. He turned and walked back into the glittering crowd, leaving Daniel standing in the shadows of the ballroom, heart racing, stomach twisting. Outside, the night air hit him hard. Daniel pulled at the tie around his neck until it came loose. For the first time, he wasn't just scared. He was furious. Nathan thought he could own him. Control him. Threaten his family. But Daniel felt something shift deep inside. He didn't know how yet. He didn't know when. But he was going to fight back. Even if it killed him. Daniel drove home from the hotel with his fists clenched around the steering wheel. Every honk, every flash of headlights blurred into the same thought hammering his skull: this has to end. He had spent weeks letting Nathan control his every move, watching his diner turn into a stage prop, and his life into a leash. But tonight, after hearing his sister's name slip off Nathan's lips like a weapon, Daniel knew the line had been crossed. Nathan wasn't just buying loyalty. He was buying fear. And Daniel wasn't willing to sell anymore. The next morning, the diner opened as usual. Customers filed in, sipping coffee, ordering eggs, chatting about the weather. From the outside, it looked like nothing had changed. But Daniel's eyes scanned every corner. Every stranger who walked through the door, every car idling too long outside, every shadow across the street, he noticed it all. At noon, the same black SUV pulled up again. Two men stepped inside, sat down, and ordered coffee they never touched. Daniel brought the cups over. His hands were steady now. "You can tell him," Daniel said quietly. "I'm done playing." The men didn't answer. Just stared at him with blank expressions. But Daniel saw it, the faint twitch in one man's jaw, the way the other shifted in his seat. They had heard him. And Nathan would hear too. That night, Daniel met his sister again. This time, he didn't tell her everything. He didn't want to scare her more than she already was. But he warned her. "If anything happens, if anyone shows up asking questions, you call me first. Don't open the door, don't answer, just call." She frowned. "Danny, what are you planning?" "Something I should have done weeks ago," he said, forcing his voice steady. "I'm taking back what's mine." She didn't press him further. But the worry in her eyes was enough to weigh on him all night. The next day, Daniel drove out of the city. Hours down the interstate, past warehouses and strip malls, until he found himself in a quiet town with a police precinct tucked on a corner. He parked, sat in his truck, and stared at the building. If he walked inside, told them everything, about Nathan, the envelopes, the threats, the event at the hotel, it could all end. Or it could make everything worse. Nathan's reach was deep. His money opened doors, closed mouths. Daniel had no proof. Just his word against a man who looked like a savior on paper. And worse, if the cops tipped Nathan off, his sister would pay first. Daniel gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles ached. Then he started the engine and drove back without ever stepping inside. That evening, the diner was busy for the first time in weeks. Dozens of customers filled the booths, eating meals they couldn't stop praising. Daniel moved from table to table, but his mind wasn't on the food. It was on the men in suits sitting at the counter. Nathan's men. Watching again. When the last customers left, the two men stayed behind. One leaned in slightly, his voice low. "Mr. Cole wants to see you. Tonight." Daniel stared at him. "And if I don't?" The man's expression didn't change. You will. They stood and walked out, leaving Daniel alone in the empty diner. Midnight. The SUVs rolled up outside. Daniel stood at the counter, rag in hand, pretending he hadn't been waiting. The door swung open. Nathan walked in, perfect as always. Not a wrinkle on his suit, not a hair out of place. But tonight, his smile was thinner. Colder. You've been making noise, Hayes, Nathan said, stepping closer. That worries me. Daniel met his gaze. I'm not your puppet. Nathan chuckled softly. You think you've grown teeth. That's cute. I'm serious. I won't be your face, your story, your toy. I run this diner. Not you. Nathan's eyes hardened. He leaned across the counter, voice dropping to a hiss. You don't run anything. Not anymore. And if you want to test me, I'll show you exactly how much you've already lost. He snapped his fingers. One of his men placed a photo on the counter. Daniel froze. It was his sister. Standing outside her house, holding her daughter's hand. The blood drained from his face. His heart pounded, but he forced himself not to react. Nathan smiled again, calm returning like a tide. You belong to me, Hayes. Every second you breathe, every move you make, mine. You want to test me? Go ahead. But remember what's at stake. He slid the photo back into his pocket and turned for the door. Be smart, Nathan said over his shoulder. You're too valuable to waste. The SUVs pulled away, engines fading into the night. Daniel stood frozen in the diner, staring at the spot where the photo had been. His hands trembled. But beneath the fear, something else burned. Rage. Nathan thought he could break him. He thought fear was enough to keep Daniel leashed forever. But he was wrong. Daniel wasn't broken. Not yet. And if Nathan wanted a war, he'd get one. Daniel didn't sleep that night. He sat in the diner's back office, the foreclosure notice still lying where he'd left it weeks ago, the weight of Nathan's photo burning in his mind. His sister. Her little girl. He had played defense long enough. If he didn't strike now, Nathan would never stop. By dawn, Daniel had a plan. Not perfect, not safe, but it was the only chance he had. The first step was information. Daniel drove across town to an old mechanic he knew, a man named Roy who owed him a favor. They hadn't spoken in years, but when Daniel showed up at the garage with that look in his eyes, Roy didn't ask questions. I need a tracker installed. Discreet. Tonight, Daniel said. Roy raised an eyebrow but nodded. SUV? Daniel nodded once. Got just the thing, Roy replied, sliding open a drawer full of gadgets that didn't look exactly legal. By nightfall, Daniel was parked a block from Nathan's glass tower office. He waited. Watched. And when the line of black SUVs pulled out one by one, he followed just close enough to slip the tracker under a bumper when they stopped at a light. His chest pounded. If they caught him, he was done. But the light turned green, the SUVs rolled forward, and the tracker blinked to life on his phone screen. He had them. The next 2 days were a blur of tension. The tracker fed him movements, patterns. Nathan's men rotated shifts, but the vehicles all led back to the same warehouse on the edge of the city. Daniel parked nearby one evening and watched. Guards at the doors. Trucks rolling in and out. He didn't need details, he could feel it in his gut. Whatever Nathan was hiding, it wasn't just money. And if he could expose it, Nathan's empire would crack. But Nathan wasn't blind. On the third night, 2 of his men showed up at the diner after closing. They didn't sit. They didn't order. They locked the door behind them. You've been busy, one said, stepping closer. Daniel tightened his grip on the rag in his hands. Get out. The second man smirked. Or what? You'll feed us to death? Daniel didn't flinch. Tell Nathan I'm not scared of him. The first man's expression hardened. He leaned in close, voice sharp. You should be. They left without another word, but Daniel knew the clock was ticking faster now. The breaking point came the next night. Daniel returned to the diner late, only to find the back door wide open. His stomach dropped. He rushed inside. Papers were scattered across the floor. Chairs overturned. And on the counter, a single photo. His sister again. This time inside her house. Daniel's pulse roared in his ears. They had been there. Inside. Close enough to leave a message that screamed louder than words. That was it. No more waiting. The following morning, Daniel drove straight to a journalist he knew by reputation, Maria Carter, an investigative reporter who had brought down more than one corrupt figure in the city. He walked into her office, dropped a flash drive on her desk, and said, "This has everything. Names. Movements. The warehouse. Nathan Pierce is running more than anyone realizes." Maria eyed him skeptically. "Why bring this to me? Why not the police?" "Because the police will bury it," Daniel said flatly. "Nathan owns half of them already. But you? You want blood. And I'm giving you the vein." Maria studied him for a long moment, then slid the drive into her laptop. Her eyes widened as files opened. Photos. Vehicle logs. Financial records Daniel had pieced together from weeks of watching. "This is explosive," she muttered. "Good," Daniel said. "Light the fuse." The story broke 2 days later. Headlines screamed about corruption, secret warehouses, financial laundering. Nathan Pierce's name was everywhere, not as a savior, but as a predator. The fallout was immediate. Police raided the warehouse. Arrests followed. One by one, Nathan's men disappeared into custody. But Nathan himself didn't fall so easily. He stormed into the diner that evening, flanked by 2 remaining guards. His suit was perfect, but his eyes were sharp with fury. "You think you've won?" he hissed across the counter. Daniel stood tall, no fear left in his voice. "You're finished, Nathan. The city knows who you are now." Nathan leaned closer, whispering so only Daniel could hear. "This isn't over. I don't fall. And if I go down, I'll take you with me." Daniel didn't blink. "Try." The silence between them stretched, heavy as a storm about to break. Then Nathan smirked, stepped back, and walked out. For the first time, Daniel believed the fight wasn't just survival anymore. It was justice. Weeks passed. The diner stayed open. The bills, once a mountain, began to shrink as customers returned in droves, drawn by the story of the man who stood up against the giant. Daniel's sister visited often, her daughter laughing in the booths like the shadows had never touched them. Nathan's trial was set for the fall. His empire crumbling, his face now a headline of disgrace. And Daniel? He still worked the counter, rag in hand, apron frayed at the edges. But every time the bell over the door jingled, he knew something had changed forever. He wasn't just feeding people anymore. He was proof that even the smallest diner, the most ordinary man, could take on someone untouchable, and win. The story didn't end with fireworks. It ended with coffee mugs clinking, plates sliding across the counter, and Daniel wiping the same spot on the counter he always had. Only now, when he looked at the reflection in the chrome, he didn't see a man drowning. He saw a man who fought back. And won.